Well, I'll get us started as Kelly's going to do another introduction after me. I just wanted to welcome you all to our event on bookseller safety tips. I'm joined today by Spencer Coursen, the author of this great book. He's a nationally recognized threat management expert and an author, and he'll be in conversation with Kelly Justice. She's the owner of Fountain Bookstore, and they're going to talk about a number of issues and best practices around bookseller safety. If you have questions for Spencer and Kelly, please put them in the Q&A. We're recording this event, so you can share it with your team later. So now I'm going to turn it over to Kelly to take it from here.
Thanks, Linda Marie. It's always good to see you. Well, welcome everybody. It's nice to see friends and colleagues in the audience. I'm going to talk to you about a really specific, how I got introduced to this book, and I might actually turn the light on in here because I forgot to do that. Just the cloud just went over. This is Bookseller Life, folks. So, you know, those grids that you fill out for authors to come to your store. Well, I was randomly filling out the one for Macmillan, and I was going through the St. Martin's section, and I saw this book called The Safety Trap, and I'm like, I wonder what that is. Security, as a security expert, secrets for staying safe in a dangerous world. And I really don't know what drew me precisely to Spencer's title. Spencer's, I'm talking about you like you're not here, but there you go. And this book, and we ended up getting the event, and it's been a life-changing journey for me reading this book and sharing it with my customers and others. And it's something that I thought was important enough that I called Linda Marie, and I said, I'd like to share this with my colleagues, because I just think it's that important for ourselves and our communities. And it's part of an overall, like, sort of a journey about taking care of ourselves, which we've all learned a little bit more about in the past year, I guess. So Spencer, if you'd like to introduce yourself and how you came to write The Safety Trap, that would be great. And then we'll talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, so a little bit about myself. Thank you so much for the very kind words about the book and for the invitation to speak with everyone here today. My name is Spencer Coursen. I'm a threat management professional. I'm the founder of Coursen Security Group, which is a threat management firm. We do a lot of work with litigation support, vulnerability reduction. I was just in Nashville dealing with a country western singer who was dealing with a stalking concern. Sort of the tagline of our business, or of my business, is we help good people make bad things better. And as I sort of talk about in the book, being a protector is a craft I've honed my entire life. I was a big brother to 3 younger sisters. I served in the military. I worked for the government. And then I eventually went on to work for a consulting firm out in Los Angeles, which at the time was considered to be like the Secret Service for the private sector. But the tragedy at Sandy Hook was a big turning point for me. And I realized in that moment that, you know, my parents were teachers, family and friends are still teach. My sister's a superintendent. That while not everyone will know the luxury of having their own protective detail, every single one of us deserves to be protected. And I realized in that moment that my particular skill set was being, kind of monopolized by that top 1%, but the other 99% of us could really find value and sort of learn the quote unquote safety traps that so many of us fall into. And the safety trap is basically a term that I coined a few years ago to help my clients understand how sometimes feeling safe is the most dangerous thing we do. Because when we feel safe, our vigilance also tends to go down, which means that our risk tends to go up. So it's kind of like we don't stub our toe on the things we notice, we stub our toe on the things we don't. But that Lego that was on the floor, it wasn't like it was like hiding in the shadows, waiting to like jump out and slide under our foot at like the last possible second. It was always there. We just weren't expecting to see it. So we didn't think to look for it. And one of the things that my global experience has proven time and time and time again is that when we don't expect to see danger, we simply fail to notice the warning signs that something bad is about to happen. but those warning signs are always there, and staying safe is about training ourselves to teach them. And so while the book title may sound a bit ominous, a security expert's secrets for staying safe in a dangerous world, this book is really about how to live your very best life the safest way possible. And the way to do that is to sort of open the reader's eyes to those circumstances and scenarios that all of us may experience in our lives. I talk about the safety traps of avoidance, of complacency, of oversharing on social media, of overprotecting our children, to false authority, to false equivalence, so that, and it's kind of structured in such a way that here's what happened, here's how it was allowed to happen, and then here are 5 protective strategies that you can employ to keep this from happening to you. And one of the really, more positive feedbacks that I've gotten about the book is, one, just how digestible and relatable and practical those safeguards really are. This isn't a book that's about, well, if I'm like bound and gagged and handcuffed in the back of a trunk, how do I get out of it? This is about, well, when you saw that suspicious guy 3 blocks ahead, that's the time to do something, not waiting until he gets close and then the van pulls up and then there are so many ways to avoid those pitfalls of harm, but it's about participating in our own protection. One of the ethos that I keep coming back into, one of the ethos I keep coming back to in the book is awareness plus preparation equals safety, because the more we are able to see the hazards on the horizon, the more we are able to put those safeguards in place to keep that risk from ever becoming a reality. And the feedback I've been getting about the book has been great. The amount of people who have been reaching out to me and saying, like, when you talked about this, it made me think about this in my life, and when that thing went bad, and if I adjust, it's one of those things where it's not that we're making the wrong decisions. It's not that we're making bad decisions. It's just that we're not making the most informed decision. And this book is what I really try for one of the takeaways to be, is just to provide you with as much information as possible so that you can make the best decision possible. Because when we make the best decisions, we basically help ourselves to succeed in staying safe. And I think one of the key takeaways is really understanding that difference between safety and security, because a lot of times those two terms are used interchangeably as if they mean the same thing, and that can kind of be a losing proposition. To give you an example, if you think about like an umbrella, the canopy of that umbrella that's shielding you from the rain is your security. Being warm and dry underneath is your safety. And when the two of those things are working in congress with one another, we are in fact protected. But sometimes one of the safety traps is that we will think that just because this umbrella can keep us warm and dry in a light drizzle or a moderate rain, and then we take it out into a hurricane and we open it up and the top flies off and we're standing there getting soaked. We're like, what's going on? Like, this isn't supposed to happen. And it's not that it wasn't supposed to happen. That is exactly what was supposed to happen. It's just that our expectations were framed that if one thing worked in one facet, it will work as equally in another. A child who is held in their mother's arms, feels safe, but a mother's love alone is not enough to keep that child protected from the evils of the world. Conversely, that child, is that me?
Sorry, that was my.
Oh, no worries.
Happens in all these. I'm good now.
Conversely, if a child is secure in their bed, tucked into their bed at night, and they don't feel safe because they believe that there's like a monster hiding in the closet, that child, doesn't feel protected. And so it's important to understand that, sometimes, we are emotional beings, and so many of our decisions are influenced by emotion. And sometimes it's important to just take a step, take a moment, look at the bigger picture, so that we can make sure that feeling safe is the same as being safe. Because while safety is ultimately a feeling, being secure is a state of being. And we need to make sure that just because we feel safe, we are still not negating those overarching protections. And so
let's talk about this in terms of practical, everyday things that our booksellers can use. One of the things that I want to say that the approach of the book is preventative primarily. So
100%.
primarily preventative. You're not going to learn judo from this thing. You're not going to learn how to, pin a robber or anything like that. That's not the purpose of this. The purpose of the safety trap is to recognize when we let our guard down and to train ourselves. And the way that you approach this is very much it's very direct. It's very gentle is not the word I want to use. It's just, it's like having a confident confident coach. It's like having your own personal Spencer taking you through how you can make your specific life more safe. And you cover, there literally everything's in here. Natural disasters, you cover personal safety, things like, one of the things that we might run into every day as booksellers, we live in an urban area, but this could happen anywhere, like walking to your car. Can you give a practical example of someone approaching you? What most people who experience success deterring someone who's bothering them when they're walking?
Sure. So one of the reasons that so many robberies or so many assaults or so many attempted muggings or robberies or what have you occur in parking lots is because parking lots are natural transition zones. We are typically finished doing something and we are either thinking back to what we just did or we are projecting ahead to what we are about to go do. So those transition zones are really some of the most vulnerable times in our lives. And if we don't know that, we don't think to partake in it, because if we're inside our head and we're not living in the now, we don't notice those pre-incident indicators, that person who may be coming towards us or the person who's coming up behind us. But if we're present in that moment, our head's more on the swivel, we're being much more confident, we're participating in our own protection, because there's two things really to keep in mind. One is that regardless of circumstance or scenario, the number one most influential factor of target selection is likelihood of success. Mm-hmm. So like a lion stalking a lion like a lion stalking a gazelle in the wild, they don't go after the strongest of the herd, they go after the weakest. And so if you are present and looking around and walking with confidence to your car, you are much less likely to be targeted than the person who is thinking in their head, or maybe they're on their phone, or they're fumbling in their bags for whatever they need, or they're loading things. And so knowing that those are natural transition points, we now know that, okay, I'm about to enter into a transition point. I'm not going to allow myself to go inside my head. I'm going to participate in my own protection, and I'm going to look around. Now, there are a few things we can do ahead of time. We can park as close to the door as we possibly could. We could park under lights. We could park where there is line of sight to other people, so that if something does happen, we can ask for help. We can have our keys out, so that I sometimes will hit the panic alarm on my truck just in case there's anyone in around my vehicle, just so that eyes go to that sound, which will help to eliminate the anonymity of anyone who may want to be doing something bad. But if you do see someone suspicious, or if you do see someone or feel that someone's following you, there's absolutely nothing wrong with just turning around and letting them know that you see them. If they're wearing a blue shirt, just look at them and say, blue shirt. And you can say it with a smile on your face. If they're wearing a red hat, you can say, hey, red hat. Anything that you can do to let them know that you see them. Because one, you are demonstrating that for them to close the distance to you is now going to be much more difficult. And also, two, you are eliminating their anonymity by saying, oh, I can identify you in a lineup. I can call attention to you. I can describe you. I see you. Because so many bad guys want to just, like, one of the reasons bad guys rob houses during the day is because you're less likely to be, obviously this is a pre-COVID philosophy,
right.
But they don't want you to be there while they're robbing your house. And so just knowing that parking lot is a natural transition zone, having the presence of mind to prevent yourself from falling into that safety trap, and then having the willingness to participate in your own protection during that process, you have basically all but eliminated any inherent risk which would otherwise be prevalent in that particular situation.
Mhm. And you talk about driving, oversharing. You know, most of us in this world, we are very active on social media. We're public personalities, not quite as formidable as yourself, you know, with all your TV credits these days. But yeah, how do we stay protected in a scenario where our lives are somewhat public? Now, we're not your big celebrity clients, but we are public figures.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a big difference between promoting your professional brand and promoting your personal interests. So there is nothing wrong with saying, hey, we're doing the bookstore is doing this, or the bookstore is doing that, or we're doing this. But what you don't want to say is, hey, can't wait for that 10-day cruise. You don't want to have, the Instagram countdown clock that's ticking down the days to your vacation, because then you're just basically saying, hey, listen, I'm going to be out of town for 5 days. Have a free reign of my house. And if your car's in the parking lot and I can see your license plate, or if I can see your name on the mailbox and you have your name with the 4517, it's not hard for me in that area to find out which street you live on. I can just go on Google Earth and kind of like, okay, if this is her bookstore, she's probably going to live within a 50-mile radius. It's not that hard to find out. Yeah. And, and then if you also, on top of that, so one of the things with oversharing on social media, it's not the one thing that you post that will be the most critical concern, but you'd be surprised how much information gets shared over a 6-month period. Mm-hmm. From the name of your dog, your birthday, your
brother's name,
your brother's name, your mother's name, your next door neighbor's name, the street you live on, where you like to shop, where you like to frequent, there's so many things that if you kind of treat each one of those pieces of information like a jigsaw puzzle, then you just start plugging and playing each of those little pieces of information. Eventually that overarching mosaic begins to form. And if you're also then, showing, kind of like an MTV Cribs type documentary of all the valuables you have in your house, then you're also giving them the time and place that you're not going to be there for a specific duration of time. You are basically just inviting, you've basically just given them like a brochure of all of these things in your house and the perfect time and opportunity to target you. And so while those things you post online may not be the reason you are targeted, all of those things will help someone who wants to target you to be more successful. And so, like I said before, it's great to promote your professional branding, but you want to make sure that there are safeguards in place that prevent you from oversharing your personal, collateral, for the lack of it, but whether your personal possessions or your personal interests or your personal vulnerabilities. And, there's nothing wrong with just conducting a social media audit every so weeks, because while something that you posted 3 months ago may have been perfectly relevant at the time, does not necessarily mean that it's relevant today. So, just participate in your own protection, audit yourself with honesty, and there's nothing wrong with, having a friend look at your social media and be like, hey, what do you see that's on here that could maybe, because, sometimes, like I know when I was writing the book, sometimes you get writer blind, and that's why you need an editor to come in and take a second look at things. So yeah, oversharing can be a problem, but it's definitely a problem that we have under our control, and it's very easy to course correct if we have the willingness to do so.
Talk a little bit about, because this covers a lot of things, the concept of false authority and following orders blindly. I mean, this covers things from the active shooters and all kinds of. Yeah. I do want to cover that, because that is it's starting to happen again now that we're back together again. It's almost a daily occurrence. and things that we can do to protect ourselves and our children in the unlikely, but more likely than it used to be, event that we're in the vicinity of something like that.
Sure.
Protect ourselves and customers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So there's a couple different things that I think we want to touch on there. One is that, so just in its essence, false authority is someone who basically claims to be a subject matter expert in a particular area simply because they have expertise in another area. So while my mechanic is great at fixing my brakes and giving me an oil change and fine tuning my truck, he is not a chef. And whereas the chef of my favorite restaurant may know how to make a duck l'orange to perfection, he is not the guy I would go to have, my brakes fixed or my oil changed. And so, we sometimes hear, well, oh, my uncle runs a charter boat down in Florida, and he says that the reason that the tides are that the reason that the ocean is so polluted is because of X, Y, and Z. It's like, okay, well, your uncle running a charter boat in Florida may put him in contact with people who are, in an environmental realm, but he is a boat charter guy. He is not an environmentalist. If I want to know about the specifics of the environment, I'm going to go to an environmentalist. And just because that environmentalist may also use a boat to go out and collect water samples, I'm not going to go to that environmentalist about the type of engine my boat should have. So it's just it can sometimes get conflated with podcasts and news and articles and what have you. And even like in my own aspect, like I am a threat management expert, but to sort of say like, oh, I'm a security expert, or I'm a medical expert, or I'm a cyber expert. Well, there are like, if you have cancer, you're not going to go to an ear, nose, throat, doctor. If you have, if there's like very specific specialized things. And just because like I'm a threat management expert and I can speak intelligently about, basic password protections, like I'm not the guy you come to address your ransomware concerns. Like I would have to pass that off to a subject matter expert. And so when we get into things like run, hide, fight, or workplace safety, or workplace violence prevention, it's very important that we understand who were the authors of, or the proponents of those very specific policies. Because, while my parents were excellent educators, they were not professional protectors. And so for my parents to tell the school what to do in an active shooter situation, just because they read my book would not make them the proper authority to put those plans into place. And what we see a lot of times with both schools and workplaces is that they promote accountability over survivability. They want to make sure that everyone is accounted for and they know where everyone is, much more than they do wanting to promote the survivability of the individual. So when you take something like run, hide, fight, which is something that originated in the military with pilots who were shot down overseas or who were prisoner of war, and they were able to escape, and then they could run as far and as fast as they can, trying to get away from the enemy and two friendly forces. But then maybe they got too tired or they were exhausted and they needed to camouflage themselves for the night to regain their strength. And then as soon as they were able to regain their strength, they started running again. But if they were to ever be confronted by the enemy again, they would fight like their life depended on it, because it absolutely did. That framework, that, escape, survive, resist, escape framework is fantastic in that particular setting. But then to take that overlay and put it onto a collective, like a school or a workplace, is a horrible idea, because basically what it becomes is run to your hiding spot. And just like we would not hide from a fire, because a building fire is just as dangerous and not as unpredictable as an active shooter, like we wouldn't, life and death is not a game of hide and seek. If there is a threat inside the building, you want to get outside. You want to put as much time and distance between you and the bad guy as possible, because which is harder to hit? The the tee, the ball on the tee, or the ball that's being thrown at like 95 miles an hour across the plate. So it's, you don't want to be the one who's like cowering in the corner. You want to be the one who's putting as much time and distance away with each step you take. And same thing with like sheltering in place. Sheltering in place is great if the threat is on the outside. If the police are engaged in a shootout with a bank robber down the street, yes, you would want to initiate a lockdown drill, because you don't want people to go outside where there's danger. If there's a hurricane, if there's a tornado, if there's falling trees or lightning strikes, you want to stay inside, because the threat is outside, safety is inside, or you're protected inside. But to think that you could, somehow hide from a bad guy, because schools are not, they're not hard targets, or they're not like hardened rooms. Like bullets travel through doors and windows very effectively. And the other thing with the whole like active shooter engagement is that it's not like these are outside actors doing these bad things. These are insider threats. These are one of the reasons that students attack schools and office workers attack the workplace is because that is where the initial grievance first took place. The ideation that they could do something about it first took hold, where the research and planning is disguised as their everyday activity because they're supposed to be there, where they don't need to breach any kind of security protocols because, like I said, they're supposed to be there. And so the initiation of violence often isn't realized until, the gunshots ring out, "Can you hear me now?" And so while there is the mental health and the caring for another, and the first step to saving ourselves, if our willingness to help another philosophy is most certainly in place, we also know that the programs that we have in.
You cut out for a second. You're okay now.
We want to make sure that the plans and the policies that we have in place are designed to keep us safe and not to safeguard the interests of the author of those policies.
Right. I don't want to stay on this topic too long, but I want to do a little bit of translation for our bookseller friends and what it means to us in our daily lives. One of the things that I train my people to do when they get on is like, if you have a situation in a store, get out. Get out of the store. Nothing inside the store is too valuable or means enough for you to stay there. If you're uncomfortable, if you're even a little uncomfortable, walk out the door, go somewhere else. And come on, we all read horror novels. We know what happens when everybody goes to the basement. They all get whacked. You know what I'm saying? It's just, this is not
right. Like in the horror movie where like
we know this.
In the kitchen and then she runs up the stairs when like the back
exactly. We all know what's going to happen. So, and I'm not trying to make light of this in any way, because a big part of Spencer's book is the fact that if we had a different approach where we were actually looking for those aggrieved and mentally ill workers, children, community members, normally they have been, it's the same story all the time. They've been broadcasting forever that they're unhappy, that they're violent, they're angry, that so getting to the situation, changing the fundamental approach to how we think about preventing these things rather than spending all the effort on making our schools bulletproof. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's just trying to.
Yeah, no, I think I think one of the reasons that we're seeing such a rampant escalation of these violent outbursts is that our threshold has been so low. I think one of the unexpected consequences of quarantine and the lockdown was this social isolation. And sometimes those human dynamics are perishable skills. If we get so used to communicating in one way through things like Zoom or Slack or email, or like the normalcy of online interaction is completely different than interpersonal dynamics. And so our threshold for that kind of angst, anxiety, and turmoil and upsetness is much more likely to spark now than it has ever been before. And so just having, We saw that poor child who was killed in Los Angeles because his mother, cut someone off, or she was cut off, and she just gave someone the finger, like she's probably done 100 times before, but she just gave it to someone who just wasn't in a state of mind for dealing with that. They threw a shot out the door. That bullet traveled through the trunk and went through the child's, seat. And just our willingness to just kind of give others that benefit of the doubt, just to have a little bit more compassion and understanding, and understand that we're all under duress, that we're all anxious, that we all have some level of anxiety with us. We also we need to make sure that this return to normalcy doesn't come with more complacency and more shirking of our responsibility, because it is on all of us to look after our friends, our family, our community, our neighbors, to really help all of us to come back together as one. And the more that we can see each other as a community and less as an individual identity, we can really start making a lot of difference in all of our success for safety.
Yeah, I'd like to open it up to questions while we continue to talk. So if anybody in the audience has any specific questions for Spencer, or anything about what we do at Fountain to be more safe, and it's a journey. It's kind of overwhelming. There's one very specific thing that you meant, just something that here's one thing that you can change today. What's a safe distance to be behind a car in front of you? You need to be able to see that. I learned that was one sentence that dramatically increased my safety in my car. So I need to be able to see the bottom of the tires of the car in front of me. Yeah. And this book is just packed with little one-liners like that this is one thing you can do today, Yeah,
absolutely. Well, where's the safest place to stand in an elevator?
I've forgotten that one already.
In front of the buttons. Because if you're standing in front of the buttons and someone suspicious gets on, you're on a perfect place to get off. Right. But you're also if you don't think about it and then they start acting a little weird, you're in a perfect position to hit the buttons to get off at the next floor. And
or the alarm button, or
the alarm button or whatever. But that's
prevent them from pressing all the buttons.
Right. And sometimes we have this, we're almost like dogs in Pavlov's lab, where the buzzer rings and we start asking for the food. Like when those doors open, sometimes it's just our natural instinct to walk on. So every once in a while, just practice that. Even for someone who's perfectly benign and not at all a threat, just get into the nature of being like, oh, you know what? I left my keys, sorry. Because you don't want that first time that someone looks suspicious to be, you're trying to think of what to say or what to do or what have you. You want to already have that muscle memory in you so that you can participate in your own protection. Like, oh, hey, sorry, I forgot the thing. And you've done it so many times before that when you need to do it for real, it comes across as legitimate and not at all a concern, or not at all offensive or inappropriate or being mean. And, but it's kind of how many times have we rehearsed with our fire extinguishers, right? Just go to Home Depot and buy 2, and then take it out back and use it once. So you understand the whole pull, point spray, because you don't want the first time using it to be a literal trial by fire.
Yeah, we have one question from a person who's if you can identify them, this is a bad guy, presumably, if you can identify them, can't they also think they'd have to escalate to eliminate you so you can't be a witness?
Well, no, because they haven't done anything yet. Right? What I'm talking about, if you are walking to your car and you see someone that you think may be a threat coming towards you as you are walking to your car, all you're doing is being friendly by saying, hey, red shirt, hey, blue hat, hey, whatever, because what you are looking to do is prevent that bad thing from happening rather than responding to that bad thing after it has already occurred. Whether or not let's say it's 50-50, that person is either going to be a threat or not a threat. If they're not a threat, they're going to be like, hey, tall shoes, or they're going to do something back that's jovial and fun. And you're going to have you're going to feel better. They're going to feel like, it was like, oh, I just had this odd interaction with someone. But, but if it was real and it was someone who was intending to do harm and you just eliminated their anonymity by letting them know, now they're going to course correct and go to someone who's a much more a much more easy target for them to be successful in attacking. It's not like they're not all invested in getting your purse. They just want someone's purse. They're not all invested in stealing your car. They just want a car, and so it's important to understand that, there's like a safety trap of false equivalence where we think, well, no one's going to steal my car. They're going to steal my neighbor's car because his car is much nicer. No, they're going to steal the car where the keys were left in.
Right. Yeah, they're going to go through the door that that
Right.
was left open. Right. But I respect I get the concern. I get it.
Yeah.
I'm not used to using this thing. So, okay, here we go. Beth is wondering, what's the one thing everyone working in retail should be aware of while working with the public?
Everyone should have a code phrase, which means I need help. So whether it is I use this example in the book about this poor woman who was working the counter at one of the airlines during a holiday rush, who started being berated by this particular unruly passenger. And I stepped in to intervene, but it would help everyone in any setting to have some kind of a key phrase that they could use to say, whether that internally to your organization means to call the police or to have a manager or to have security come over or what have you. But even if it's just if you're behind the counter of a bookstore and someone's being unruly and you just go, hey, can you give this to Fred in aisle 3? But everyone knows that there is no Fred and there is no aisle 3. And so no one who hears you, who's not, you're intimately familiar with your surrounding, knows that that's a duress signal. So you're not immediately elevating those things. But what you are doing is getting more eyes on you so that you can succeed in staying safe, because there is strength in numbers. There is the ability to kind of establish that framework of understanding. And you are then going to be much more empowered to be in a position to try to offer some assistance to that person. But if that ultimately fails, that help is right around the corner to come and help you resolve that situation. But sometimes we kind of panic in that moment because it's something we haven't had to experience before, we haven't had to deal with. But if we know, no one fears that which they know well. So if you know that there's a way for you to get out, or even if there's no one else, you can just go to another customer, hey, can you ask that person over there for Fred to come over? And that other customer will go over and talk to them, and they'll be like, Fred, and then they'll go, oh, Fred, there is no Fred, but I can. Right. And then they look over and see what's going on. But anything you can kind of do to just have those situations in place. It's also always a good idea to not have the checkout buried in the back of the store, but have the checkout more towards the front of the store, so that if people are coming in and out, you can look to them for assistance, or you can ask them for help, or you can give that look hey, things are going bad here. Can you go get me some help? But if the checkout is in the back of the store and you're kind of isolated and there's no exits and there's you want to sort of have that in a high field of view, one, so that you can greet the people coming in and out, because that not only makes them feel welcome, but you're eliminating the anonymity of anyone who may be there with nefarious intent. But two, it has the added bonus of putting you in a more of a protective posture to, promote your and sort of set yourself up for success, to sort of see the whole field of play, rather than being in a corner where you can get boxed in for sort of like a chessboard.
Mm-hmm. I thank you, Beth. And the other, we do have these secret phrases at Fountain. We also have individual phrases for this is that we will get back to this world where we have large scale events where if an author is feeling uncomfortable, a keyword they can use.
There's another great app that I was just introduced to just a couple of weeks ago. It's called What 3 Words, and basically what these guys did was they cut up the entire Earth into 10-meter squares, and every square has its own unique 3-word system. So that if you are in a bookstore, let's say it's however big it is, each individual square of that bookstore will have its own unique identifier. So that if you are forced to hide, or if you are, if there's a guy who's, squatting in the back office, you can tell the police using these 3 words exactly where in the store they are, so that they don't have to come in and go like, oh, well, where is he? And you have to go, oh, they're in the back. Like, they will know exactly where in the store you are. It's a phenomenal system. And I like it for personal safety, for if you're out running a trail, or if you're out in public, because if you call 911 from a cell tower, those cell tower locations triangulate your location to within a 50-meter grid. And if you're in a more remote location, that could be
Right.
a 300-meter grid, which is like 3 football fields.
Right. It's not
But
small.
or let's just say you're at a park or you're on a trail, the address will only go to the bulkhead, right? It's not going to tell them. Whereas this will tell you exactly where you are in the field, exactly where you are in the stadium, exactly where you are in the school, exactly where you are, wherever you are. So those are 2 things that I would definitely recommend that everyone look into, just as sort of like their own, participating in their own personal protection platform.
Yeah. I want to, if we have any other questions, please put them in the Q&A. I want to talk about this book as a bookseller to bookseller for a minute. So Spencer, if you can just bear with us.
Sure.
There is a chapter in here about great ways to protect your children so that they are empowered to look after their own safety. Should you get separated from them, or should they be in a situation where they're by themselves? That's very important to me. There's some video on your YouTube channel, I believe, about that. As a bookseller, I am actually going to, I don't do this often, but I'm going to plead with you to put this on your shelves. It's a really important book. I read a lot. I know you do too. And I know you don't. I respect your time. I'm glad you made time for us today. And I know that you don't have time to do everything, but this book is really important. And if you can get a copy in the hands of any of your public officials or educators, parents, but most of all for yourself, start with you if you can. It's also available on a Libro FM audiobook, which if you can listen to that passively in your car or wherever. That's where I learned the car tip, actually. And it's a lot to think about, but it's also very practical. And so just as colleague to colleague, I really want to make a case for this book. I do not pull out this card often. You all who know me know I do it about once a year, and this is it. Okay. So excuse me, Spencer, for doing that.
No, please. Thank you so much.
And please share it with your colleagues as well. Any final words you'd like to leave us with today?
No, I just want to say, if anyone wants to reach out to me directly about, specific concerns to your, establishment, please reach out. Happy to help. My personal email is the letter S at CoursenSecurityGroup.com. The website for the book is thesafetytrap.com. My business website is CoursenSecurityGroup.com. And seriously, if you would like some signed copies, if I could get any of you a copy for your own reading pleasure, please let me know. Happy to do what I can to support your store. Hopefully we'll get to the point where we can start doing in-person signings again. I would love to meet all of you in person and come out. And seriously, at the end of the day, my reason for getting out of bed in the morning is to help good people make bad things better. So do not hesitate to reach out if there's anything I can do to help you achieve that goal. And thank you for your time today. This is a true pleasure of mine. And thank you so much for all of your support.
Well, thanks for being here, Spencer. I'm not sure how these things end, if Linda Marie comes back on and says a few words, or if we just close out. Perhaps she could tell us in the chat so we don't have to be all awkward. Okay.
There we go.
There we go.
Seek and ye shall receive.
Thank you. I think that there was a question about the name of that app you mentioned, Spencer, before.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry.
Sure. It's called Just 3 Words, and I'll show you exactly how it works, because it really is quite, I'm sorry, what 3 words? So it's this, I don't know if you can see it, but it's this red one here down in the corner. And
Okay.
what it basically does is you open it up. Sorry. But, and then it pinpoints your exact location. So even in my house, I'm in my office. There are 3 words for my office. If I was to go to downstairs to the kitchen would have 3 words because the kitchen is vertically in a different part of the house. The backyard would have like a couple different, sections. And and I am not sponsored by them. I am not, I was doing someone else's podcast, and it was like a survival, like, this podcast is, give him a quick little plug. He's my buddy, Clint Emerson, former Navy SEAL. He's got a podcast called Can You Survive This Podcast? And I was a guest, and we were in this scenario where I was like being chased by a bear, and my cell phone finally got signal. And the question was, do I text for help or call for help? And I said that I would text for help because an SMS will connect faster than a call going through. And so if your battery dies, at least they can know your location. And he was like, have you heard about this app called What 3 Words? And he talked to me about it. If you go to my podcast, Coursen's Corner, I did like a whole 20 minutes on it. I'm not, like I said, not sponsored, but it's one of those, it's probably the most effective personal safety app I've seen offered thus far. And I'm happy to promote good things that help make bad things better.
And just another thing, Spencer's also just marvelous to work with. So I'm sure if you thought of community events or something in your area that Spencer could advise. I mean, it's not just introduce himself and just like this, maybe do an event for your bookstores.
Absolutely, anything I can do.
Yeah, I think that because you've just been an absolute dream to work with, and I've learned so much. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Linda Marie, for indulging me. I literally said, Linda Marie, I have to do this for our membership. And
I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Take care.
Cheers.